Our people were crucified, our people were murdered, our people were exploited, and the Drax family, they're the ones who benefited.
He isn't necessarily demanding that Richard Drax be destitute and chucked out and have to live in a tent by the side of the road. He sounds pretty reasonable to me.
He's done very little to level up.
It's surely your duty as a local MP to engage with those communities.
Even if you didn't have to owe responsibility to them, if you've got like hundreds of people gathered outside your house angry, you're likely going to do something about it, aren't you? You'd occasionally turn and wave at him and be like,
was that waving you up?
Stop goading him! He's going to shoot us!
He's going to bring back Richard Drax. Yeah. Hello, Harry.
Hey Ed, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. We're here to react to some content.
We are.
We are reacting to our film about the Dorset South MP, Richard Drax. Mm-hmm. He owns 2% of Dorset. There's a 3-mile wall around his house.
There is.
And his familial wealth is directly linked to the slave trade. So we're going to talk about that. If you haven't watched it already, please do. It's very good. We're both very proud of it. What I think we wanted to highlight in this film is Richard Drax lives this life of luxury that's afforded to him through his ancestral wealth. And in complete contrast with his constituents, who South Dorset is quite like, some areas of it are very deprived. They live side by side with extreme luxury because it's like a holiday destination. So we saw some pretty amazing yachts in the marina. And his critics say that he's refusing to engage with people calling for reparations. The Barbadian government is considering plans to make him pay reparations, and it's also been found out that he still owns Drax Hall plantation in Barbados. And his constituents, some of his constituents also say that he's refusing to engage with local issues and getting involved with things that will help his constituents, and he's refusing to kind of take responsibility for either of those things. So that's what we wanted to explore. This is Chris Brady. He's one of Richard Drax's constituents.
It's a big estate with a beautiful, gracious house in it. And the extraordinary thing is, I find, Ed, is that our MP who lives behind this wall, you know, is the MP of a constituency with many inequalities, significant deprivation, who's done very little to level up.
Well, how safe is Drax's seat?
Well, this is the extraordinary thing. He's got a majority of 11,000, but the election in 2019 was a Brexit election.
Right.
Richard Drax is very much a Brexiteer.
Chris and other members of Stand Up to Racism Dorset had arranged for David Denny, a Barbadian reparations activist, to visit Dorset and see the estate that his ancestors may well have died for. Something that Drax's people weren't taking kindly to.
And his colleague Harry.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. How are you doing?
Yeah, we've already getting some aggravation from.
We're getting aggravation.
The estate's manager
What's an
has
aggro,
come
Harry?
across us and
What have they said?
parked his car by the gate to try to block.
Really?
Yeah. They're very hypersensitive about this.
Slight overreaction for a photo opportunity, I'd argue. The estate's manager of Richard Drax's estate, he's parked his car to try and disrupt this.
Well, I'll have you know, it's a legal offence to be parked with your engine running.
Yeah, on the comments on the actual film, lots of people did make the point about talking about the legality of the estate's manager keeping his car running. I think that just that exchange, we get into, as viewers of the film will know, it becomes a bit more. This develops. The estate manager is the Chekhov's gun of this piece. He comes back, but I think that's like. I think that's such an overreaction to what this was. What this was like maybe there was this. So this was like a photo opportunity essentially. If we had not been invited, I don't think there's going to be any media there. There certainly wasn't any media there apart from us, and it was just a photo opportunity for David Denny to see Charbel Park, along with like 6 or 7 people from Stand Up to Racism Dorset, and just the estate's manager comes and just like makes his presence known. I thought it was quite. I think it was intended to be quite intimidating. Yeah. Which, these people are seasoned activists. They've been doing this for a little while. I doubt it works, but I thought it was kind of. It's not like. Well, I don't think Richard Drax himself ordered his his goon out to come and intimidate us. But it just shows how kind of sensitive the estate itself is to criticism, I suppose.
Definitely, yeah. I think also he got given the brief of showing a presence. I feel like he took it to the absolute nth degree by parking right in front of the gates where they were going to have their photo op. And then, as we see later on the video, obviously he starts following us down the road. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I think he's got so comfortable, Drax, being behind this massive wall and kind of being hidden from the public, that he'll go to any measure to ensure that there isn't any media coverage or scrutiny from his constituents.
Or further afield, like we'll see. We're
Yeah.
going to speak to David Denny, the activist now.
Everybody, David, do you want to get... Where's David?
I'm here.
Okay.
Richard Drax, your time is up. Slavery justice now. Richard Drax, your time is up. Slavery justice now.
Our people were crucified. Our people were murdered. Our people were exploited. And the Drax family, they're the ones who benefited.
In terms of Richard Drax himself, what action would you like to see him take?
Reparation can be paid in the form of upgrading schools in Barbados, especially in St. George, where Drax Hall Plantation is located. Polyclinics and hospitals, the infrastructure in Barbados, especially in St. George. The housing structure, because many Barbadians live in very poor communities where houses are serious problems for them. Reparation can also be paid in giving our people academic scholarships.
And then what would you tell Richard Drax directly, if you could speak directly to him?
If I can speak directly to Richard Drax, I would tell him to look into the mirror and ask himself one question and follow the answer. And that question would be, is it fair? Okay? Look in the mirror and ask that question, ask himself that question. Is it fair for humanity to suffer and others become very, 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 very rich?
I think perhaps Mr. Drax would say he shouldn't be held responsible for the actions of his ancestors.
But he should be, because he's a beneficiary. If he wants to be kind to the people, well, then pay them reparation. Look at this plantation, look at this estate, and look at the conditions of the people. So that's why he needs to look into the mirror.
I think what's particularly interesting there is when people talk about paying reparations, I think people who are against it react. Part of the criticism is, why should the person give everything up for something their ancestors did? But I think what David's kind of making clear is he isn't necessarily demanding that Richard Drax be destitute and chucked out and have to live in a tent by the side of the road. He's making quite clear examples of things that could really help Barbadian society. It's about improving social issues, improving education, improving all these things. And I think they sound pretty reasonable to me. There's also the example of the Trevelyan family, who found out that their ancestor had been a really prominent slave trader or slave owner in Grenada. And 100 members of that family, direct descendants of the Trevelyan's who owned slaves hundreds of years ago, 100 of them signed a letter denouncing their ancestor and his acts, and denouncing slavery as an evil, and it was presented to the government in Grenada. There was a big ceremony, and Laura Trevelyan, who used to be a BBC journalist, has donated £100,000 of her own money as reparations. And she's actually also given up her job as a BBC correspondent to work in Grenada with the reparations. And £100,000 in the grand scheme of things is not very much money, considering the amount of money that would have been made from slave owners on Grenada. But this symbolism of that, the significance of that, is incredible. It's been hailed in Grenada, and it's a very admirable thing to do. But to even make a start.
Yeah, I mean, even just acknowledgement alone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's more than Drax has ever done.
Yeah, he says it's a family issue, and I suppose it is a family issue, but none of my family issues have incredibly wide-reaching.
30,000 bodies underneath the ground in Barbados.
Yeah, it's not like if my family was responsible for, I don't know, socio-economic evil dating 500 years.
It's a family matter, Ed. I don't want to know anything about.
If my family had committed the original sin of slavery, and it's just so ignorant to be like. I understand completely his perspective of well, it wasn't me, but you live in that house.
Yeah,
you're still benefiting from it.
And that's a big thing that I picked up on as well. Is they obviously want reparation, but I think right now they'd be happy with just some sort of acknowledgement.
Yeah. They
just want him to say something, and it's just radio silence.
I also thought it was quite emotional speaking to David outside there. It's one thing, I suppose, you and I speaking about it, or Stand Up to Racism Dorset speaking about it and trying to hold their MP to account, but hearing someone whose ancestors could well have lived and died on the Drax plantation in Barbados, I thought it was quite emotional. I thought it was you got the sense that David was quite overcome with this. It was brutal seeing this big luxurious wall, this massive wall that's been built with, or is paid for by the exploitation of your ancestors, and just awful.
It's like, as Grafton put it, the death wall.
Yeah,
I think that sums it up really well.
Grafton Straker, who was one of Richard Drax's constituents, who was born in Barbados, he described it as a death wall, and he also said that Richard Drax had described it as a family issue instead of agreeing to meet him, and he's a constituent. Philip Marfleet is both the chair of Stand Up to Racism Dorset and an academic. He's written a report into the decline of Weymouth and Portland, two towns in South Dorset, describing them as forgotten. You've written a report describing Weymouth as a forgotten town.
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Well, Weymouth and Portland, which are very close together and have economically and socially been linked over many generations, are two towns which over the last 30 years have gone into very, very abrupt decline. In the 1990s, the major military installations and the port in the area were effectively shut down. And that was the equivalent of shutting down, in other parts of the country, shutting down a coalfield or a steelworks. But there'd been very little attention paid to the consequences. One of the consequences was that in 2017, Weymouth and Portland had the lowest average weekly wages in the UK, a very striking statistic. In 2018, South Dorset a parliamentary constituency represented by Richard Drax had the lowest level of social mobility of all constituencies in England. So what we're looking at a record of economic decline and extreme social deprivation over which there's been almost no attention.
How has Richard Drax engaged with the report?
He's engaged with the report by responding to local media, by describing the authors of the report, that's myself and Jenny Lennon-Wood, as what he calls naysayers. In other words, people who are somehow trying to do down the area.
Well, are they? It's quite maybe is it quite striking that Richard Drax is presented with, I think it's about a 50-60 page report explaining the social issues in the area that he represents, and he's just quite dismissive of it, saying it's just real I'm all right, Jack energy turned up. Because I've read the report, I thought it was good, and the people we spoke to in Weymouth seemed to agree with Philip's points about there's a real lack of opportunities for young people in Weymouth. And completely anecdotally, we spent a day and a night in Weymouth, and we really didn't see very many young people. It's a seaside retirement town, basically, and there was just quite a lot of elderly people. Yeah. Do you remember when we were walking along the seafront where there's lots of hotels, and there just seemed to be various discos for old people just going on. Like there was a banging nightlife.
Be like a Chaz and Dave tribute act performing.
Yeah, it'd be class. But like there didn't seem to be very much to do for young people. Lots to do for old people.
I think that's the direct result of kind of the trade, all the people in that one trade just leaving the area. What was it, shipping, did he say?
The Navy.
Or the Navy,
Yeah.
right. It's the same as like lots of other seaside resorts, like the Isle of Man, that's the first one that came to my head. And then one day people were like, you know what, it's cheaper to go to Spain, so why would I not do that?
Yeah.
And it just completely decimated them.
And also, Weymouth is probably quite unique in that it's within Dorset, which is quite like a rural place. And so it's not really when people think of maybe seaside towns, they maybe think of, well, certainly not in Dorset, really. They probably think of, what's the seaside town? Like, I'm sure.
Margate.
Margate, yeah, think of Margate, places like that. Like, you think of those places, you don't think of, when you think of Dorset, you probably think countryside, rural, etc. And another issue in Weymouth is that I think Dorset Council is now, there used to be like a separate kind of council for, I think it was like a South Dorset Council where Weymouth and Portland were catered to kind of more locally, but councillors are making decisions in, I don't know where the seat of the council is, but it's not really terribly near Weymouth, so people feel more removed from their councillors, and councillors are making decisions about issues that they don't really know, they might not necessarily know much about, which is kind of a real, people just seem quite dissatisfied. Another thing that I think is probably interesting is Richard Drax he owes his constituents some level of engagement, and if your constituents are coming to you about slavery reparations or issues in Weymouth about like a brain drain of young people or a lack of opportunities and stuff like that, then you should engage with them. It's surely your duty as a local MP to engage with those communities to whom you owe some responsibility, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But even if you didn't have to owe responsibility to them, if you've got like hundreds of people gathered outside your house angry, you're likely going to do something about it, aren't you? Like say something.
Yeah, like, I wonder what those people are angry about.
Yeah, yeah.
Do they have a point?
Yeah,
it's like the Principal Skinner meme, like, no, the children are wrong, I'm not out of touch.
Yeah.
So in the next clip we're going to see the return of the estate manager, and he's back.
This is the best part, this is.
So we're just outside Richard Drax's estate. It's it's just it's massive, and we've also got one of his employees just to the right of us, who's just kind of hanging out. He's been here since we arrived at the demonstration. The demonstration was very peaceful. He seemed to be quite touchy about it.
You'll have heard underneath Phil's interview the noise of a car engine. Not the most environmentally friendly, but I decided I'd forgive him if he would have a quick chat with us.
Would I be able to ask a quick question about what you're doing? I don't know if you can. I think he's ignoring me. Yeah. I think he's ignoring me. I think he's tailing us.
What's happening?
I don't know, we just started walking away and I think the car's tailing us. We're just looking over the wall. So we've just walked away from where the protest was, and the car that was there, it kind of slowly crawled towards us. We were just taking a look over the wall, like just to see, and it's just like kind of forest and stuff. But the guy, I saw him walking, going to his walkie-talkie. He refused to answer our questions, but I think we're being surveilled by Drax. There's a car on your right as well, hi. It's the police. So we're just back at the car. We're waiting here to see if the driver catches up with us so we can ask why he's following us. He's just round that bend there. I can hear a car coming. It might be him. If you come down here and stop, there's not really anywhere for him to go, so be curious to see if it's him. But we're stopping. He's turning back. He's turning right. Hello, I'm back. interesting. They're touchy about this.
We did ask Richard Drax for an interview about the issues raised in this film. We did not receive a response. So, let's talk about what happened there. So as we've seen, you and I were tailed for a little bit by the estates manager.
Yeah, so we left him up there as well. His engine's running. We're like, cool, he's just going to stay there.
We think, oh, shoot's over.
Yeah, so we walk down the road and we kind of make it round a bend slightly, and he's, you know, we don't see him. We're like, okay, cool, back to the car then. And then all of a sudden you go, Harry, we turn around and he's just creeping at snail's pace behind us.
It's like he's curb crawling us.
Yeah.
I think, how did you feel in that? I'm laughing a lot in that clip. I was like, this is the funniest thing in the world. This is such an overreaction. Like, it was like he was trying to intimidate us.
Yeah.
Again, like he tailed us, not the activists, because we captured the incident. And we were just walking along. We had to walk along the wall to get back to our car, and we were kind of peeking over just to see what was there.
I mean, it kind of worked. I'm a pussy anyway.
Yeah, you were
like
freaking
self-admitted. But like, yeah, it kind of rumbled me.
Yeah,
to be honest.
it did. I suppose it's like I had to kind of talk you around to continuing to shoot B-roll, essentially, didn't I?
I just wanted to get the fuck out there.
Yeah,
so
you
he was,
did.
like, following us, and I was like, I don't know what this man can do. He's going to take my girlfriend's number plate in a car.
We were driving your girlfriend's car.
We were driving my girlfriend's car. And yeah, so like he came back again, and I purposely opened the boot of the car so he couldn't see the number plate. But yeah, and then because I was in this mindset of just kind of like worry, and you'd occasionally turn and wave at him and be like,
was that waving you up?
Stop goading him! He's going to shoot us!
He's going to bring back Richard Drax. He's going to take back down one of the ancestral swords and get us. I think, well, I suppose that's what he wanted, isn't it? He wanted to intimidate us. We talked about it at length. We tried to drive around the world, didn't we, to shoot some B-roll, and we were talking about it, discussing it at the time, and I was trying to like gently encourage you to to suck it up a little bit.
Yeah. So he drove past, and you saw the police go up as well.
Oh yeah, that was
the police.
When we eventually got in the car and drove on, we saw the estates manager speaking to the police.
Yeah.
Must have been about the photo opportunity, which I'd argue is a real waste of police time. I think it was.
And Ed's there in the passenger seat,
Filming
poking
it.
his camera out.
And you were.
And then they take down my girlfriend's number plate.
And then they kick your
I've been
girlfriend's door
harassed
down.
ever since. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was quite surreal. I thought it was very funny personally, but I was trying to balance it between your anxiety. I completely understood your anxiety because it was like weird. It was like a surreal scenario to be in. I wonder. It was just silly. I thought it was such a silly reaction from him.
Yeah, it was. It was too much, really. I really didn't expect him to actually follow us. And then when we did leave and we drove to do another segment in front of his big grand gates with the stags on top, and we saw that same car at least twice more driving past, and he was just doing constant circles of the estate.
I think he could just be doing his job as the estates manager and just driving up like from duty to duty.
It's just the fact that it was twice and it was in like a circle. I don't think it would be kind of like going from A to B.
No.
It seemed like he was circling. Maybe I'm wrong.
Once we get the estates manager to agree to interview.
Here he is!
Welcome special guest, the estates manager of Jarver Park. We finally got him. What do you hope people take away from this film?
It's less about what people should take away and more that if Drax or anyone he's associated with see this and see that there's mounting pressure for him to both pay reparation and actually pay attention to his constituents. I think at the end of the day, that's all people are asking for.
Yeah.
So if this film in any way can make that happen.
That's a good day at the office.
That's it, yeah.